What is up, guys? It is DMG here, and today we are going to be basically showing you guys how to win FIFA games in terms of your formation. So in past FIFAs, personally, I didn't really think the formation mattered as much. Like, obviously your formation kind of dictated how you played, and that is what won you games, how you play. So if you were, if you played a certain style that did well against your opponent, that would win you games, right? And while that's still the case somewhat, the formation, I think, is a little bit more important in the past couple of FIFAs, especially in this FIFA. I'm not really sure why I thought that formation didn't really matter in the past FIFAs. That's probably why it wasn't that good in the past, honestly. But basically, I'm just going to be showing you kind of what formations to kind of avoid and what formations do well against other formations, what formation is really popular, things like that. So what I want to do first is just kind of go over formations that aren't very good, that kind of just don't do well. And the reason I want to do that is just so we can just get them out of the way, just kind of not talk about them. One of the first formations that people actually use, and isn't really that good, is going to be the 4-1-2-1-2 with the left and right mids. That, personally, at least, like it's not really that good of a formation. It really sends out people wide, right? It puts people out wide to left and right mid spot, which seems fine. But first of all, they're out on like an island out there. They don't really connect with pretty much anyone. Maybe like the left mid to the left back and the right mid to the right back. But that's pretty much it. They don't really link with a lot of other people. And along with that, narrow formations are very popular this year as well. A lot of people are looking at what the pros do, just to see, what are they doing, what formations are they using, what tactics and instructions are they using. And a lot of pros do use narrow formations. In fact, I can't really think of a pro that kind of uses wide formations. So this formation isn't good for that reason. It's, first of all, it's wide formation. And again, it's because of those left and right mids not really connecting with anyone. But again, it's a wide formation, so everyone in the middle is kind of left for dead. Like, if you come up against a narrow formation and you're using this one, you're kind of screwed. Like, at any single time that I come up against a 4-1-2-1-2 with, left and right mids, and I have a 4-3-2-1, a 4-2-3-1, a 4-3-1-2, like anything that goes through the center, I dominate it. Like, I dominate it every single time. And that's what you really want to do this year in FIFA, is just pretty much have a formation that dominates the other, so then you can just dictate the play, right? If you want to be able to if you dictate the play, you're going to be in good hands no matter what. Try to avoid this formation, the 4-1-2-1-2. Do not really go for that formation. Looking through other ones, I'm not really sure. There's a lot of other ones. 4-3-3. Some people do use this, so that's that's fine. And if you do well with a certain formation, by all means go for it, right? If you do well with a certain formation, go for it. But I'll talk about why you might need to adjust later on. We'll talk about that later. But this formation, I mean, I feel like it's has very defined roles. Like, there's the defenders, then there's the center mids, then there's the attackers. And personally, I don't really like that because it doesn't really play that well. But it does well against narrow formations, so that's a good thing to have. Let's see. 4-5-1, that's going to be one to avoid, at least in my opinion, just because if you have your center mid running forward, your left and right mids running forward, your center attacking mids and striker are obviously going to be forward, but if you have everyone else going forward, which will probably happen, especially for your center mid, then you're really going to be screwed on the counterattack. And if anyone has played any FIFA games this year, everyone knows that defensive counterattack really does well this year. So if you use this formation, you better score pretty much every single time you have the ball. Like, this is not a possession formation. If you try to possess, everyone's going to get forward, including that center mid, and then you're going to get countered, and it's going to leave you exposed. So it's probably best to avoid this formation. Those three were kind of the ones to avoid, and definitely the 4-1-2-1-2 is probably the one to avoid the most, in my opinion. So what are the popular formations? What are the best formations? So again, there isn't really a definitive best formation this year, just because it depends on you. But I would say that there are definitely some formations that are a lot more popular that are better than other formations, right? One of them, 4-3-2-1. That's a pretty decent one. It's a pretty common one this year. I would say the most common formation, 4-1-2-1-2-2. Now, it's funny because this is probably the most popular formation, and then the 4-1-2-1-2, the other version of it, is, in my opinion, probably the worst formation to use. So the only difference is, instead of the left and right mids, you have the left and right center mids. So it's a more narrow formation. You're going through the middle, and that is what a lot of the pros use. This is what a lot of the pros use. It goes through the middle. It kind of clogs the middle up, and along with that, you can kind of have it more defensive as well. You can have the center mids stay back. You can have the defensive mids stay back, and then it can just be kind of your center attacking mids and your two strikers. So, I mean, I could definitely see why this is one of the most popular formations. I use it from time to time, but not as much, just because I'm not a huge fan of it. But again, it's not necessarily the best formation. It's just one of the most popular ones, and it is better than other formations. Another one that is becoming a lot more popular in recent months, 4-2-3-1. I think the reason why it's becoming a lot popular is because one, again, it is a narrow formation. You have 3 center attacking mids, you play through the middle, you have 2 defensive mids, so it's very defensive. So that's definitely one of them. You have, again, defensive mids. It helps defensive stability a lot. You clog the middle if you need to sit back. So that's definitely one of them. But then another thing is, because you have 4 attacking mids and you have a striker, you have all those attackers, and then for your defense, you do have those center defensive mids. So that's probably one of my favorite formations this year. And again, it's becoming a lot more popular. A lot more pros are using it, or at least switching to it in game, along with the 4-1-2-1-2-2 as well. Some other formations that are popular, 4-3-1-2, very similar to the 4-1-2-1-2-2, except instead of a defensive mid, it's a center mid. So pretty much just pushed up a little bit, but from what I've heard pros say, it's not very different. The only difference is that you have a little bit more pressure in that midfield, because again, instead of that defensive mid, you have a center mid. So if you like the 4-1-2-1-2-2, then you're probably going to be liking the 4-3-1-2. 4-3-3-4, that's decently popular. I still think like the 4-1-2-1-2-2, the 4-2-3-1 is becoming more popular than this. I do see it more often. I do think it's the most popular 4-3-3 formation. When you are using that, be sure to have some good center mids there, because, you know, if they get forward again, you're going to get countered very hard. So it really depends on your players' work rates for certain formations. So we talked about formations that are not very good, formations that are popular. Next, I do want to go over formations that really help for chemistry. So if you want to switch in-game to something else, then you can. 4-3-2-1, that's definitely something that helps, just because no player gets more than 4 links. You have the center mids and the center backs. They're the only ones with 4 links. Then it's the left and right forward with 3 links, striker with 2, goalkeeper with 2, left and right backs with 2. So when you try to do formations with chemistry, be looking for ones that don't really have a lot of links to certain players. One that does have a lot of links to certain players would be like the 4-3-1-2. You have the center mid and the 2 center backs that have 5 links to them. So again, it's going to be a little bit tougher. Then you have the 2 center mids with 4. You have the strikers with the center attacking mid with 3, and then you have the left and right backs and the goalkeeper with 2. So if you're building a team that you want to switch formations in game, don't really go with this one, because again, it's going to be a lot harder to do chemistry with. So one that we just talked about, 4-3-2-1, that does get a lot of good chemistry. It's easy to do. Another one, just be a 4-4-2. That's probably one of the easiest ones, just because you can split it right down the middle and just be really simple. You can switch to it in game. Another one would be probably the 4-3-3-4, again, because no one gets more than 4 links. Another one I would probably be the 4-3-3-3. That's probably one of the easiest ones to get chemistry in, because you have the 2 defensive mids and the center backs have 4 links. You have the center mid striker with 3, and then you have everyone else with 2. So if you have wingers, this would probably be the one to do your chemistry around and then switch to a different one in game. One of the last things I do want to talk about is what certain formations do against other formations. So like I was saying earlier, the 4-2-3-1 is becoming very popular, the narrow 4-2-3-1. So as you can see, the ones with the center attacking mids in the formation. Not the one with the left and right mids, but the center attacking mids. So this formation, personally, I think it's one of the better ones. Usually this is probably my go-to in game. If I'm having trouble with this, then that means I need to switch to a 2-striker front. That's what I've noticed. So the formations that I have trouble against when I'm using the 4-2-3-1 would probably, one of them would be the 4-1-2-1-2-2. That would definitely be one just kind of switch to 2 maybe, or occasionally the 4-2-3-1 does actually work, but that's usually one for me that I don't do very well with. 4-4-2, I've actually noticed with the 4-4-2, if I have the 4-2-3-1 formation, the 4-4-2 actually does very well against it, surprisingly. The 4-4-2 is actually pretty decent, just defensively, just because you can put the left mids, center mids, and right mid on stay back while attacking, and it could just be the 2 strikers, so it could be very counter-attacking and very defensive. One that is also very good against it would be the 4-3-3-3. Again, just because you have the 2 defensive mids and a center mid, you can tell them to be sitting back while you are attacking, and then they can just be counter-attacking as well, very defensive. So formations that are pretty much very good against the 4-2-3-1 in terms of you trying to attack would just be ones that are very defensive. However, formations that I do extremely well against with the 4-2-3-1, formations that just get dominated by the 4-2-3-1, any version of the 4-3-3, literally any version. So anyone from 1 through 5. If you have a 4-2-3-1, or I take that back, if you have any formation and your opponent comes up, if your opponent has any version of the 4-3-3, I would very much recommend, very highly recommend that you switch to a 4-2-3-1 in-game, because it just dominates it. Now again, I did mention that the 4-3-3 is pretty good against the 4-2-3-1. Now that's extremely defensive as well, but I found the 4-2-3-1 to also be very, to be more effective against that defensive formation versus other defensive formations. So if you're going up against a false 9, 4-3-3-4, 4-3-3-2, or the first one, switch to a 4-2-3-1, because again, it just dominates it. And if you have a formation that dominates your opponent both attacking and defensively, you're pretty much just going to win the game. So for the 4-3-2-1, for formations that kind of do well against it, I've noticed that the 4-3-1-2 does very well against it. Surprisingly, not the 4-1-2-1-2-2 as much. I've had some mixed success with that. It really, in terms of that, it kind of depends on what your opponent does. But if you have the 4-3-2-1 and your opponent pulls out a 4-3-1-2, I would recommend switching your formation, just because this one has a lot of high pressure. The 4-3-1-2 has a lot of high pressure. The 4-3-2-1 is made for, not necessarily, it's also for counterattacking, but some tiki-taka as well. But along with that, there's no center attacking mid. There's no player between the striker and center mids, or the left and right forward and center mids. So there's no player linking up that play. So the center mids, the 3 center mids in the 4-3-1-2, those guys are just going to have a field day against the 3 center mids in the 4-3-2-1. So again, I would really recommend switching a formation in the 4-3-2-1 if you come up against a 4-3-1-2. So certain formations that do bad against the 4-3-2-1, so if you're doing, if you have the 4-3-2-1, formations that you will pretty much do very well against would be pretty much any wide formation. I've noticed that if I have this formation, and I come up against the 4-1-2-1-2 wide formation, I dominate it every single time, because again, there's no one in that center mid area. I can just pass between these guys and then pass it through with my attackers. So that's going to be it for the most part. I do want to get something in real quick. Pretty much what I would recommend is switching to a 4-2-3-1 in game, especially if your opponent has a 4-3-3 formation or any variation of a 4-3-3. And if that doesn't work, switch to either a 4-3-1-2 or a 4-1-2-1-2-2. That's what I would recommend. Usually this formation does very well against the majority of other formations. If it's not working well, then you probably need a 2-striker front or those kind of 3 forwards in a 4-3-2-1. So if this would be the go-to, if this doesn't work, switch to a 4-3-1-2, a 4-1-2-1-2-2 if you need 2 strikers. If you need more firepower, switch to a 4-3-2-1. That would probably be the best in terms of actually playing the game, trying to, if it's in the 20th minute or whatever, actually trying to score, trying to defend against your opponent. Now, if you want to defend a lead, if it's in the 80th minute and, you don't deserve it, you don't deserve to be winning, or your opponent's starting to put on a lot of pressure, one formation that does really well defensively, 4-3-3-3. put your defensive mids on stay back, your left and right backs on stay back, and your center mid on stay back. It clogs the middle really well. No one really goes out wide, and it's just really, really good defensively. And also along with that, 4-2-3-1 does very well in the closing minutes of a game, so switch to that as well. That would be very good. 4-1-2-1-2 is okay at it, but I'd really recommend the 4-3-3-3 or the 4-2-3-1. So, you know, if you're in game, the 80th minute, you have this formation and your opponent starts to put on more pressure, switch to 4-2-3-1 or 4-3-3-3. So that's going to be it for this video, guys, in terms of how your formation can help you win FIFA games. If you have any questions, just let me know in the comments down below and I'll try to answer those for you guys. I kind of want to get a dialogue going on this video specifically so then you guys can get more help in terms of formation. I might do one in terms of instructions and tactics and gameplay later on if you guys really like this video, if you support it a lot. So we'll see for the future video on that. But again, thank you guys so much for watching. This has been DMG. Peace.